Hey, welcome back to the station, you guys. I want to talk about a movie that's on Netflix, and it's called Spoiled Brats. And that's exactly what it's like, Spoiled Brats. Now, this is in subtitles. I think this movie is over in, it's a foreign film. Let's just put it that way. And you got to read the subtitles. You got to. They'll be talking their language. I don't know if it's over in Italy or something like that, but it's kind of like a rich section. But I'll read the plot synopsis. I'm not going to hang long, but this is not a review. This is me telling you. If you get a chance to watch this movie, check it out. It's a little different. You have to stay with it, but it's got a good little twist to it because its three spoiled siblings are forced to earn a living after their wealthy and well-meaning father pretends he lost everything to teach them a lesson. I mean, these three was just awful. Awful. They knew they had money. They took full advantage of it. They act like total imbeciles to me. The girl was just flat out rude. And she was in love with this guy that didn't even have anything. He was just a good looking guy. And he was wanting to marry her and take her for the money. And because he knew her dad had money. And the dad knew that he had money. Because when he went to go when she went to go tell his dad that they wanted to get married, he was like, and who's going to pay for the wedding? And he just sit there like, and she was like, well, you are. And he's like, because he was looking at him like, what you got to offer? Because he knew that that guy wanted to marry her because he was loaded, because they was filthy rich. And then he had these two boys. One boy was just a playboy, like he was just banging all these girls. He was banging some of his, he was banging his teacher's daughters, and he was just a rich, spoiled, bratty playboy, and had no responsibility. And then he had this bigger son who was trying to work in the company, but he had some of the dumbest ideas. And when he pitched them, they would sit there, and his dad would just look at him like, wow. And then his best friend, which the dad's best friend, would sit there who worked with him. They had this big company that they, because his dad was a multi-billionaire dude that he was known for building these big construction sites, and he was really good at it, and he just made tons of money, and his kids was just spoiled. And see, their mom had passed away, so it was just those three kids and his dad. But anyway, him and his best friend started talking. He was telling his best friend, he says, I'm thinking about, they came up with a plan to act like his company got caught embezzling money, and the money wasn't his, and he was on the run. So when it flips to the kids, all three of the grown kids, the credit cards didn't work and all this, because the dad had set all this up. So they were all freaking out. So, he comes running in like, we got to go, just grab whatever you can. They was like, what? So he takes them to this raggedy place that he had bought a long time ago that he never fixed up. And it never was fixed up because he didn't have time. So he's like, we got to stay in hiding and stuff. And then he's like, what are we going to do? He goes, well, you got to go out and find a job. He goes, you got to try to bring food in the house. And they were all freaking out like, what? And then so they all started going out, and they all had to work except for the youngest one. The youngest one just refused not to work. He was still in bed lying around. He just couldn't believe it. And so his dad and his dad's friend would come by, and he would ask him, so how's the kids doing? His bratty daughter ended up working at a restaurant, and then she started seeing what it was like to be talked down to, because she talked down to people. And then the other son was a big husky dude. He ended up working for over there. I don't know if it's in a foreign country. I don't know if it's Italy or France or whatever they were at. You have these bikes that you ride, and you put people in the back, and it's like you use it as a taxi. And so he had this French guy, this real good looking French guy, kept riding fast because he was a big husky guy. So he was not used to working, so he always run out of gas because he was out of shape. And this good looking Frenchman would, he would ride by and make faces, and he would pick up people, and he just couldn't make money that way. So he was getting frustrated with that. In the meantime, the dad, a couple of days went by when the dad noticed that the young boy wasn't doing anything, and the dad just started fixing up the house because his dad knew how to build things. So he just was like, you know what? While I'm teaching these kids a lesson, I also start fixing up this house. So the son came down. He's like, hey, how come you ain't getting a job? And he's like, don't, you know, he made up some excuse. So he told his son to start picking up a brush and helping. So his son started doing stuff, and his dad was looking at him like, when did you learn how to do that? And then he said, well, when I was in school, he goes, we played a trick on this teacher, and he said it took me 3 months to reroute the plumbing so I could have the plumbing go to where he was at so it can blow up in his face. And his dad's like, really? He goes, yeah. And then the way this movie set up is that he was teaching his kids a lesson, but at the same time, while he's teaching his kids a lesson, his kids taught him a lesson, because when later on, his kids found out that this was a joke. It was a joke, and they were pissed. And so they told him, they said, Dad, please tell us that this was not a joke. And they said, because if they do, we're going to turn our backs on you. And he says, yeah, he says, I wanted to teach you a lesson. So they just walked away from him, and they didn't want nothing to do with him. So they left him in his big mansion by himself. And they went to that place where he took him at first, when he told him that, you know, they didn't have no money. And so they started, at this time, they all three learned how to wait on themselves. And so they didn't need him no more. But in the meantime, when they had a conversation with him, they all three told him, they said, when Mom passed away, you was never around, because see, he was always working and making all this money. And then he said, well, what happened? You know, he started asking, he says, well, when what's-your-name got hurt real bad, he goes, he called me and I had to take him to the hospital. He goes, well, when did you go to the hospital? This is the dad talking to one of his kids. He goes, I took him to the hospital. He goes, well, when did you do this? And then the girl's like, I'm the one that went and did this. He had no idea that all this stuff was going on with his kids, because he was making all this money. So he was teaching them a lesson, but at the same time, he had a life lesson on himself, because he was so busy trying to make all that money and be successful. And, you know, he just thought that making all that money, he was just a good father and providing for him. But he really was never there for him since their mom had passed away, because ever since their mom passed away, it's just been him and the three kids. And the three kids more or less had to tend to themselves, because he was so busy. They said, well, he said, well, where was I at when all this happened? Because there was a story about one of them. He goes, they said, well, you was in Turkey on one of those big conventions, because you had that ribbon cutting thing because of this building that you just got done completing. And he was like, wow. So they got mad at him and left. And so like 9 months went by, he haven't heard from them. So he decided to go back and see if he brought some wine and some flowers. And then he walks in the house and they're all there. And at this time, they learned how to wait on themselves, which he did help them out. But then at the same time, when they found out he did what he did, they just walked away from him. They was just didn't want to have nothing to do with him. And so he wanted his family back. So, you know, they didn't say nothing to him. He dropped off the flowers and he told him, I see you guys are doing pretty good. So at the end of the movie, he just walks out the building that he was fixing up, that when he took them to there at first, it was all junky. But then when they found out that he played a joke on them, they decided to stay at that place and they started fixing up the place. So when he walked in, he's like, wow, this place looks pretty good. So, you know, his kids really did know how to do stuff. But the moral of the story is, so at the end, they walked out and they grabbed him and took him back in the house. And then, you know, he sat on the couch, and then a couple of his friends was over, and then his kids, and he just sat on the couch and he had his drink in his hand. He was looking at his kids, and he was just, at the end of the movie, he was just proud of his kids, you know, because after all, his kids didn't know what to do. So anyway, you guys, that was a quick wrap up of what I wanted to tell you about. It's called Spoiled Brats. It's a foreign movie, but I think you'll really like it. God bless and take care, and we'll catch you in the next video. We'll see you.